All right, we're going to go behind the scenes of the fashion world to look at what might be the single most important step in making our clothes, the cut. It's that first moment when a roll of fabric starts its journey to becoming the shirt you're wearing right now. And it's a step where perfection isn't just a goal, it's the only option. You know that feeling when you try on a pair of jeans and one leg just feels off? Or a shirt just doesn't sit right on your shoulders? Well, you're not imagining it. And that tiny little imperfection that drives you nuts, it usually happens way, way before a single stitch is ever sewn.
Here's the truth. It doesn't matter how amazing the sewing team is, they just can't salvage a badly cut piece of fabric. The quality, the fit, the whole vibe of a garment, it's all locked in right here at the very beginning. So let's get into it.
Now, before we jump into all the cool machines, we really need to understand the stakes. I mean, what does a perfect cut actually mean when you're dealing with a massive factory floor? So, at its core, fabric cutting is pretty straightforward. You're just separating all the pieces, the sleeves, the collar, the front panels, from a huge stack of fabric. But the two key words here are absolute accuracy. There is just zero room for error. None. And to hit that mark, every single cut has to follow three golden rules. First, precision. Each piece has to be a perfect copy of the pattern. Second, you need clean edges. No fraying, no snagging, nothing messy. And third, consistency. This one is critical. The piece at the very top of a stack has to be 100% identical to the piece at the very bottom. But there's this kind of hidden enemy in the cutting room: heat. See, when a blade is slicing through hundreds of layers of synthetic fabric at a super high speed, that friction can literally melt the fibers. And what happens is the edges of all those layers fuse together into one big, useless block of plastic. It's a production killer.
So, how on earth did they solve these kinds of problems before all the high-tech machinery we have today? Well, let's start with the oldest, simplest method in the book.
Yep, good old hand shears. For centuries, this was basically the only tool you had. And honestly, for things like bespoke tailoring or creating just one sample garment, they're still the best. When you're only cutting one or two layers at a time, you just can't beat their precision. But trying to make clothes for thousands of people with these, not a chance. The trade-offs are pretty clear. Yeah, they're precise and there's not much risk, but they are so, so slow. The time it takes, the cost of labor, it makes them totally impossible for mass production on a global scale.
Right, so to make thousands of identical clothes, you need speed and you need power. This brings us to the next big step in our story: the moment electricity walked into the cutting room and just changed the game forever.
And this is the machine that made it all happen. This is the straight knife, and it is the undisputed champion of the apparel industry. It's a handheld electric beast that an operator guides through these enormous stacks of fabric. I mean, think about this. More than 99% of garment factories today rely on this exact piece of tech. So let's quickly break down how it works. You've got a powerful motor that drives this long steel blade up and down at an insane speed. The operator steers with the handle, while the base plate, which has these little rollers, glides underneath the entire stack. And my favorite feature? The auto sharpener. It keeps the blade perfectly sharp without ever having to stop working. So cool. But what if you need to do really intricate, curvy cuts? Well, for those specialized jobs, factories have the band knife. And the whole concept here is totally flipped. The machine itself is stationary. It's basically a sawmill, but for fabric, with this thin blade that runs in a continuous loop. So the operator moves the fabric around the blade, not the other way around. And you can see the pros and cons right here. With the straight knife, the machine moves through the fabric. That's great for big pieces, but it's also a bit riskier. With the band knife, the fabric moves around the stationary blade. It's perfect for small, complex parts, like collars and cuffs, and it's way safer, even though you do end up wasting a little bit more fabric. Okay, rounding out our trio of powered knives is, you guessed it, the round knife. This one's a lot smaller and lighter, with a blade that's, well, round. You wouldn't use this for really deep stacks or super sharp corners, but for making nice, gentle curves on smaller batches, it's the perfect tool. But just cutting out the main shape is really only half the battle. For the sewing team to assemble everything perfectly, they need guide marks, and that means you need a whole other set of specialized tools. So meet the notcher.
This little device cuts these tiny, super precise V-shaped or U-shaped marks into the edge of a stack of fabric. These notches are like a secret code. They're alignment points that tell the sewing operator exactly how to line up two different pieces to get a perfect seam. Okay, but what about marks that aren't on the edge? Like, how do you know where a pocket goes? For that, factories use a drill. And yep, it does exactly what you'd think. It punches a tiny hole straight down through the whole stack of fabric at once. This makes sure that every single pocket is placed in the exact same spot on thousands and thousands of garments. So we've gone from simple hand shears to powerful electric knives. Now we enter the final frontier, full-blown automation. This is where computers take complete control with a level of precision that is it's almost hard to believe. Welcome to the world of computer-controlled cutting. There are no paper patterns here, no person guiding a knife by hand. Instead, you just have a cutting head that glides over the fabric, guided completely by a computer program, making a flawless cut every single time. The whole process just seamlessly connects design with manufacturing. So first, designers use CAD software to arrange all the digital patterns, kind of like a game of Tetris, to make sure they waste as little fabric as possible. Then, the CAM system takes over, and a machine automatically spreads the fabric, layer after perfect layer. And finally, the automated knife just gets to work, cutting everything based on those exact digital instructions. So why would a company invest millions of dollars in a system like this? Well, the advantages are just massive. You get incredible speed and accuracy that no human could possibly match, and you cut down on fabric waste like you wouldn't believe. And on top of all that, it takes very few people to run, and it's much, much safer than a handheld power knife. And all this technology brings us to a final, pretty fascinating question. As automation gets closer and closer to perfection, a level of skill that once belonged only to human hands, what does that mean for the future of this craft? In a world of automated precision, what is the role for the human artisan?